Welcome back to On the Edge. I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host, and I'm here today with Charlie Skelton, who's been the Guardian's correspondent for the Bilderberg meetings for the last 3 years. And this is a very rare mantle to have as a journalist because, frankly, no one's been covering it. So we're hoping that some of what we're talking about today and some of the people we're talking about are going to help open and shed light on what is a shadowy cabal, representing a shadowy group of people, meeting in secret, with the lights out, so to speak.
Well, let's call it private, not secret.
It's a private meeting, yeah. It's a private meeting for members only.
Yeah.
So I think
Chatham House rules. Yeah,
Chatham House rules, Surrey Golf Club, etc. We've got some text in from some of our viewers, and some interesting points. Most of them are directed at you, Charlie. Greg from Edinburgh has texted in. He said, I wish more mainstream media employees would come forward and talk about the Bilderberg Group. How do you feel about that as a mainstream media guy?
Right, so that's all I'm about, what he just said there, because I shouldn't be doing this. I'm so far from being a proper journalist. It's not even real.
You got to be writing jokes for Jimmy Carr.
I should be writing bad jokes. Exactly.
For Jimmy Carr, you can't be covering Bilderberg.
Yeah, no, I genuinely shouldn't be. And
where's Robert Fisk? Where are all our Pulitzer Prize laureates? But
I sort of regard myself as a shame on all journalism, the fact that I'm news journalism, the fact that I'm there. And as soon as the BBC and CNN and the Times and the Telegraph and the Washington Post, as soon as they start sending people and setting up a press tent, and I'm going to back off because I've got nothing to be doing there. But what's interesting about that is this huge news vacuum that's filled by alternative media. Mm-hmm. And over the last 3 years, I've seen it absolutely explode from barely a dozen people in 2009 through a kind of press office that I helped run in 2010. The press office got bigger, and when I say press office, a kind of hub of alternative media, sharing content, sharing data, sharing networking, and basically doing the job of the mainstream press. Yeah, I mean it's unbelievable they have to be doing that.
But between you and Alex Jones, I think you probably reached millions of people in the last 3 years, and you've helped jumpstart the sort of Bilderberg coverage, really. And now some of the mainstream media cannot ignore it. And the U.S., a lot of the major newspapers at least have to at least acknowledge its existence. And Marco Rubio, who is potentially the favored vice presidential running mate for GOP nominee Mitt Romney, or de facto nominee at this point, Marco Rubio was apparently being talked about by the Bilderbergers as Romney's running mate. So they just give people an idea. They kind of choose, who is going to be in the steering positions in the years to come. But let me just get to queue up 109. Let's talk about the Young Turks, because we talked about that before. The old guard of Bilderberg. Now, is the David Rockefellers. These are the aging, decrepit, dark crystal creatures like Henry Kissinger. Now we're getting into the sexy new media, Facebook, Twitter, Napster. Right there on the top left-hand corner, I think that's Sean Parker from Napster. Now he's also the first president of Facebook. If you saw the movie The Social Network, he was played by Justin Timberlake. He's going to be at Bilderberg. He was recruited by the CIA when he was at 16 years old. When he won the Virginia, he went to Chantilly High School in Virginia, which is a coincidence, and he won the Science Award. Now you've got Peter Thiel down at the bottom there, one of those three faces. Peter Thiel, Clarion Capital, they bankrolled Facebook, PayPal. Yeah. This guy is...
He's fascinating. He's my favorite of the new guard by a long way.
And was he there last year?
Yeah. And he's on the he's now been promoted. His career's gone up. He's now on the steering group.
Okay.
Of Bilderberg. So he's really in.
He's got a seat at the round table.
Yeah, he's got a seat at the table. Yeah.
Okay.
I kind of like him in a weird way. He's a strange character. He calls himself a libertarian. He's into that whole thing of I'm going to call it. He's got a company called something like Seascape. It's something, if you look him up, you can see where they're trying to create offshore sovereign entities. Okay. So he's an interesting guy.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this is the thing with the Well, my brother, who's a social networking entrepreneur in America, he calls them the revenge of the nerds.
Yeah.
So you have these buffoons from Harvard, computer science graduates, who have come through the economic turnstiles and now come out in real positions of influence and control. You know, they're presiding over Facebook, which by all accounts, on a virtual level, it's a sovereign country. It's got a population, it's got its own currency, it's got its own markets, it's got a social network, divided, subdivided, and subdivided.
Well, they were all. I mean, last year you can look at LinkedIn. Reid Hoffman is there. Amazon. You've got Chris Hughes, Facebook. You've got Craig Mundy, who said Microsoft. Eric Schmidt, Google. All the big names are there, and also the head of the NSA. And you get a sense that they're worried about openness, information. There's so much data at the moment.
Yeah,
it's kind of a wild stallion at the moment. They're trying to
the free internet.
keep a noose around.
Yeah, they're scared. They're scared to death. I mean, Google's seed funded by NSA and CIA shell companies. So from the get-go, people aren't aware that Google has hands and is occupied and controlled in some key positions on the board and in management by members of the government, essentially, and the funding is coming from those agencies.
Well, all Google Maps and stuff, it's all just American military satellites and CIA, whatever. So
it's just commercialized retail NSA technology. Yeah. Okay, well, cue up 108, because just to stay topical here, this is a big thing this year for Bilderberg. Greece. Greece is at the center of the European Union recession. You talked about the haircut before, the collapse of the euro. What the Bilderbergers are frightened of, and this is what I've read through our coverage at InfoWars, this fantastic article by Paul Joseph Watson. If you want to know about Bilderberg, go to Infowars.com, because we've got volumes of information. But they're scared to death about Greece mounting an economic comeback if they opt out of the euro. Let's say they go back to the drachma, getting out, once Greece gets out of the euro straitjacket and Greece gets back to what it knows best, which is tourism, olive oil, feta cheese, and smashing plates, that they're going to have this massive resurgence. And then Spain's going to look and say, well, wait a minute, why are we signing up to 100 years of austerity and getting ourselves strapped down into permanent debt, and Italy and Portugal and Ireland, where the technocrats have now been placed, unelected technocrats, in heads of state positions. Which has worked
really well in Italy for them. I mean, they've got Mario Monti, who's...
Three-card Monti.
Yeah. Bilderberg Steering Committee, now the unelected, PM of Italy. I felt like his appointment was very much them coming out of the shadows. It was like Bilderberg.
Monti's appointment.
Yeah. It was like, okay, here we are. We're just going to do this thing now. Here come the technocrats, and it was Greece.
Because the euro is very, very important for the Bilderbergers, because I think it was Davignon, who was a former Bilderberg head, he bragged about how they hatched the idea of the single currency in 1991, and obviously that was signed into action at the Maastricht Treaty in 1999, but he said this was a Bilderberg, a successful Bilderberg project, so it came out of our meetings and our steering committee, and the euro is the template for a global government. They would like to roll that out, the central banks, to have an African single currency, to have a South American single currency, to have a North American single currency, and an Asian single currency, or a Pacific single currency.
Well, Europe is their baby. I mean, the history of Bilderberg is the history of Europe.
It is,
and it's you can watch it, and right from the very beginning. You've got and this is, I was just grabbed some notes from earlier, which is, if you want to look at the history of Bilderberg, look at a guy called Joseph Rettinger. And he works for the British intelligence in the war. Then in 1946 he addresses Chatham House with he says, I want a new effort in the direction of the unity of Europe. Then the CIA come in, the CIA and the British intelligence, and he's there and he's going out. Then he goes out to America. He meets the Rockefellers, Nelson and David, J.P. Morgan. The bankers come in, Dulles. And you can see this thing gets built together like this, and then they start going, okay, and this kind of political financial intelligence entity starts building Europe, you know, as their you know, some academics of the left, of the British left, say, you know, this is essentially the CIA building a kind of block against communism and going, we need a big old thing to sit here between, literally between us and the communists. You know, whether or not that's exactly what it is, but you know, you can watch it right from 1946 through to now, and yeah, absolutely, I think Greece is a big crisis for them.
Financial intelligence, what you just said, that's a really important, because, you know, when you have the major power brokers in the world, we're talking about the central banking families and so forth, you know, they speculate. This is how they consolidate power. When you know something's going to happen in advance of it happening, and I'll give you an example, George Soros, very intelligent guy. He didn't get to where he is today without being able to speculate. And what better way to speculate and to know the outcome than to actually have a hand in engineering the outcome. I'm not just talking about knowing if legislation is going to be passed or regulations that you can make millions or billions. I'm talking about the formulation of countries or economic blocks. This is serious stuff.
Absolutely. The biggest lie we've been sold as a civilization for the last 100 years is there's such a thing as free trade, I think.
I agree.
There's a big fat thumb on the scales everywhere.
Yes.
Quite often it's George Soros's, but if it's not his, it's, you know, it's David Rockefeller's. And if it's not his, it's someone else's. And you know,
in India, it's Monsanto.
Yeah, right.
And they've got a fat thumb on the food and commodities markets, and that's why half the country's starving. And that's because of the WTO and GATT regulations. So they've had to buy in. The Bilderberg franchise in India has had to buy in to the dictates of the WTO.
And if you look at what Bilderberg is, again, in the sense of these technocrats and the way they operate, they're operating. It's kind of the managerial board of a technocratic class of a managed, planned economy. And you look at how Europe operates. Just look at the size of it as an entity. I'm talking about the Commission. I'm talking about the European think tanks, the universities, the unbelievable size of this thing.
In 20-odd different countries with 20-odd different languages.
Absolutely, and it's about having a planned economy and about having these technocrats manage things. And when you quite often hear people say, well, they just let them get on with it. They're just doing their best to keep the show on the road. You know, and I guess that's sort of what they're doing, but I don't believe that, you know, Shell and the head of Barclays and the head of HSBC and the head of Deutsche Bank are all, you know, planning exactly with my best interests as their bottom line. I think they have other bottom lines.
They have other. I think they have their own set of interests and their own vision of the future, which supersedes the pluralistic or the democratic machinations of us, of plebs and serfs.
And by the way, if there were no politicians there, and no public officials, and probably no military and stuff, you know, you just think, go and get on with it. Go and do what you want. Dance naked for 4 weeks around a bonfire and then plan the takeover of the world. But when my Chancellor of the Exchequer is there in an official capacity, he's meant to be representing me, not skulking around in secret behind dark windows.
So quickly, we're just going to go quickly to 107. There's just to wrap things up for this hour. Occupy Bilderberg, okay? Give us a shout out. What is Occupy Bilderberg, and where is Bilderberg this year? Well,
Bilderberg is in Chantilly, Virginia, the end of May, first few days of June, and at the Marriott, in the middle of a complex of arms companies, and just up the road from the CIA. And it's Occupy Bilderberg seems to be really taking off, and it's a kind of an amazing meeting between the alternative media, the Occupy movement, and a kind of an aware, protesting, activist community. And I just think I kind of got high hopes for it. I think it's going to be amazing.
May 31st to June 2nd.
Right, something like that.
Chantilly, Virginia. Alex Jones will be there along with a few thousand people, I would imagine.
I think there is.
You know, before Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton both left the campaign trail to meet at Chantilly. And left their press corps and everything.
That's a brilliant. That footage is online, and it's very funny.
And that was to decide which one of them was, they had an argument or something about who's going to be president. And of course, Obama is the man now. But Charlie, I just want to thank you for this hour.
On the Edge, in association with Uncensored Magazine.